Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a score to our game. So to be able to display the score on the screen, we're going to need a text object. So I'm going to double click to create a new object. I'm going to scroll down to General and find Text, or you can also search for text. Make sure you select the General Text object, not the Text Input object. I'm going to name this Score Text and do Insert. Normally it gives you a crosshair and you can click to place it. Since it didn't for me, I'm going to drag and drop it from the objects type over here. So now you'll see I have text in black really small. So I'm going to change that to say score so that I know what it is. I'm going to change the color to something that shows up on this background. Since this is a dark background, I'm going to do white. And then I'm going to change the size so that's easier to see. So we'll go with maybe 30. And then make sure you resize the box so that you can see it. I'm also going to stretch it this way so that there's enough space for my score without it wrapping to the next line. Now to have this positioned well or consistently, I'm going to put this at X20, Y20. Now I'll just put it in the top left corner about the same amount across as it is down. Then to make this work, I'm going to go over to the event sheet. So the first thing I want to do is make a variable to keep track of my score. To make a variable, you do the same way you did the monster timer. You can either click add in the bottom right corner, do global variable, or you can right click on the bottom, add global variable. I'm going to name this score. That's different than score text, which is why I named score text that earlier. The initial value, our score is going to start at 0, so I'm going to have that. Hit OK. Next thing I want to do is initialize my score text object to my score value at the beginning of the game. So I'm going to add a new event, and that's going to be a system event, and that's going to be the start of the layout. So if I just type start, I should see on start of layout. And I like to have start of layout at the top. Now, it's important whenever you're rearranging events to grab the handlebar on the left and not just the condition. If I drag the condition and try and move it, it's just going to move that and combine it with another event, and we leave behind a blank event down here. So instead, I'm going to grab this handlebar, and that will move the whole thing. So for example, on Monster Timer, if I grab that handlebar, I can move that event and its 4 actions all at the same time. So I'm going to move my start of layout up to the top. And this is where I'm going to set my text. So I'm going to add an action to on start of layout. I'm going to get the score text object, and I want to set the text. So set text. And then we'll go to next. And then the text I want is inside the quotation marks. I want it to say exactly score, colon, space. Now I want to connect it with the value of the score variable. So I do not want that part in quotation marks because I don't want the word score. I want the value of score. So I type score. But I can't just put those side by side. The program wants us to connect that with some value. And the way you concatenate string, this is a string value because it's inside of quotes, which means text. The way you concatenate a text value and the value of a variable is an ampersand, which is shift 7. So we have quotation mark, score, colon, space, quotation mark, ampersand, then our score variable, and then hit done. So when I run that, instead of it just saying score, it should say score, colon, 0. If I go up in the top left corner, I see it there. Next, I need to be able to add points when I destroy a bad guy. So when my bullet hits my monsters, that's when I should get points. So I'm going to add an action. It's going to be a system action because there's no object performing this. I want to add to a variable. So if you type add, you should see add to. I want to add to the score variable, and how many points I want to get, we'll say 100 or 1,000, 500. You can put any number you'd like. But if I run this, it's not going to work. So I'm going to run this in debug so we can kind of see what's happening. So if I shoot my monster, which I got him because, well, now there's 4 monsters. You'll see I'm getting them, but I'm not getting any points here on my score. But if we look at our score variable, I actually have 600 points, and if I shoot another one, it's 700, and if I shoot another, it's 800, and another is 900. So the score is changing, but the text object is not changing. So I set the text object here on start of layout, but I also need to do it every time my score changes. So I'm going to go up and copy that value. So right click, copy, or Control C. Then I'm going to go down to add score to add 100 to score, and I'm going to paste that. It should go right underneath it. If it's before, then the score is always going to be off by 100. So you want it to be right after. So now when I run it, you'll see I have 100 points. Now we just need to make score not part of the background, but stay on the screen. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back to my layout, and right now I have a layer called layer 0, and I'm going to add a layer at the top, and I'm going to make that the UI or the GUI, the graphical user interface layer. And then layer 0, I'm going to rename that and make that the game layer. Then I'm going to take my score object, I'm going to go to the properties panel where it says layer and change that to the GUI layer. Then I'm going to click on my GUI layer, and I'm going to change my parallax settings. So parallax is that effect you see when you're playing a game or watching an animation where the background moves slower than the foreground to provide the illusion of depth. So normally you'd set parallax at something like 75 or 50 or 25, depending on how far away you wanted it to appear. If we set our parallax to 0 for X and 0 for Y, then there's going to be no movement. So that means score should be locked on the screen. So now, wherever I go, that's where it'll be. And that should be it for adding our score to our game.